back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I'm Julia Patrick. I'm here with Robert Stack, President and CEO of Community Options. And I think he's going to share with us a lot of options when we talk about disability advocacy and just general mindset that the nonprofit sector can communicate out. Robert, welcome. It's really an honor to have you on our program today.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate being invited.
You know, I don't use the word national pioneer and trailblazer very often. We've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. We've produced over 1,100 shows, 5 years. This is a really interesting conversation for us to have with you because I think you can bring with us a tremendous amount of perspective, and I'm really welcoming this discussion. So I'm so delighted that you are here with us today. Before we get going, I want to make sure that we also promote and delight with the sponsorship that we have. And this comes from Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and 180 Management Group. These are the folks that support us day in and day out. We also have an amazing co-host panel. We've been introducing them over the last couple of months. I hope you've gotten to know them. They come from all over the country. They're incredibly diverse in their work, thought, action, and deeds. And I'm flying solo today, but they are amazing, amazing folks. Okay, Robert Stack, President and CEO of Community Options. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Where are you coming to us today from?
Right now, I'm in Princeton, New Jersey.
Amazing. And that's where your offices are?
Yes, our national headquarters is in Princeton, and it has been here for quite some time.
Wow. And you travel, I would imagine, because of your network and your work, you're probably traveling throughout the country quite a bit, right?
I am constantly in the air. I think the scariest day was when I got on a plane and the flight attendant asked me if I wanted the usual.
Oh, good and bad. Good and bad. Yeah, I know. It's a tough thing, and that's a part of leadership now too. You know, you can't just sit in your office and wait for things to happen. You got to get out there and do. Well, before we get into this too much further, and I have so many questions for you, so I'm going to be just barraging you with questions. Fair warning. Talk to us about what Community Options is and what you do, and then we're going to get into your personal journey.
Okay, Community Options is a national nonprofit organization. We founded it in 1989. The mission is to develop housing and employment for people with disabilities. So we started, what happened was we saw a need for this because there were so many thousands and thousands of people with disabilities living in institutions and living with mom and dad. And now mom and dad are getting older. They're no longer able to care for them. And they didn't know where to turn and what to do. And there's a lot of similar agencies that are nonprofit like Community Options. Our difference is that we're not a separately incorporated entity where there's hundreds of separate, Easter seals or whatever. We're just one entity called Community Options. So we saw this need. And we were able to open up our first. And what we do is we'll buy a home, small home, and we'll find people that are in need of housing, either because of their family can't take care of them anymore, or they're going to be emancipated from a large congregate institution where they've been placed years before. And we'll put them in a small house, maybe a 4-bedroom house, and they'll each have their own bedroom. And we'll hire staff and train them before they're placed. And then whenever they live in that small house, they'll learn or they'll sharpen their skills on cooking and cleaning and handling that house just like anyone else would. And then they would do what all of us do. They'll get up and they'll go to work, or they'll go to a program, and they'll enjoy life just like any other American.
Amazing. Okay. So thank you for painting that picture, because that's something that is going to frame up a lot of the things that we talk about. I would love to start with what your personal journey has been in advocacy, because reading your bio on your site, which is quite extensive, um, brought back some memories of language, our attitudes about disability that were more familiar to me growing up. So I kind of was thinking we've come a long way, but I'm wondering if you think we've come a long way, and how has your journey shaped that?
Thank you. I think we've made tremendous progress,
You do?
but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah.
I always remark at the fact that the space Hubble telescope was flying all over in space long before people with disabilities were emancipated from any institutions. Certainly, that the Civil Rights Act in the '60s were really important and wonderful, but people with disabilities weren't part of that Civil Rights Act. That there are a tremendous amount of strides have been made, but there's still a long way to go. And as you said, the vernacular has changed dramatically. We used to use words like the disabled. People always, even today, you can still pull up to certain uh, uh, parking lots and it says handicap parking. And
Right.
and handy, where does the I'm really not sure. There's been a lot of speculation about the etymology of the word.
Yeah.
Cap in your hand,
Tapping
beggar.
your hand for money.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's true or not. But
I
that
don't know.
that's one of the things we've heard. But we don't use that. And just as though we don't like to be given labels, we want to be people first, and people with disabilities want to be people first. And because
Mhm.
of that, that's what we call them. We call them people. A
Mhm.
person with a disability, or a person who's from Arizona, or a person who's from Chicago, or a person who's from
Yeah.
Florida. So they're people first, and
Mhm.
that has changed. The other thing is that we've looked at is differently with words. They're special. Special. I like to say that special should be used only to refer to things on sale or occasion. I like a special occasion would be good, but but, but special. People don't want to be a special person taking the special bus to the special school because
Yeah.
they get special ed from the special ed teacher. The other thing we've felt that people with disabilities want to go to class just like anybody else. They don't want to be segregated in a special school. They want to go to a regular school like everyone else, and they want to teach. And the teacher should be taught, various curricula that would be reflective of a lot of educational aspects, but also special shouldn't be a segregated entity that's just a specialty, if you will.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that we look at. And when I was growing up, I worked with people with disabilities. As a child, I was in a seminary. I left the seminary, and um, I noticed that the place that I worked at had closed, and it closed because it was a nonprofit, but the people who were managing it didn't really know what they were doing, and it became obvious to me that people with disabilities rely a lot on the good graces of charity, and I think that we're trying to get out of that methodology as well.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
and we think people should work, just like we all work for money, but we
Yeah.
all work to do things that we like to do. And something I've realized is that there's a direct relationship between the severity of your disability and your level of loneliness. And if you
Mm.
have people that you can interact with, if you have people that you can work with, if you have people that you can share your experiences with, or what you did the night before, or
Yeah.
what your aspirations are, and enjoy life, you will live longer, your quality of life will be better, and you'll feel good about everything that goes on. So it's a definite enhancer to your own life, and it increases your lifespan. I'm only speaking anecdotally, of course, but that's been our
Mm.
feeling all along.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because think about just the Surgeon General of the United States. So many healthcare providers and people, in science talking about this epidemic of loneliness and the mental health issue that we kind of forget about, and we don't ascribe it to purpose and work environment until it's too late or it's negative, right? And so I think that's an interesting thing to talk about, and to recognize. Um, in the scope of this type of work. This kind of takes me back to your foundation in 1989 when Community Option opens, which is pretty astonishing to think about. I'll lay it out here. You opened last century and you're like, oh no, am I, don't say it. But I mean, this is really a trajectory that's amazing because of all the things that you've gone through and seen culturally, politically, economically. What was it like when you first opened? I mean, were people like, huh, what are you doing? I mean, you probably had a pretty big chasm to jump over to even communicate what you were doing, right?
Yes, it was extremely challenging to say the least. I worked in you had to work. I worked from home because I didn't have a choice, and I had no place to go. I had no office at all, and I was constantly sitting there typing what my bylaws were going to be and what my articles of incorporation were going to be and how I was setting everything up. And I was very, very lonely. And Skype didn't exist and Zoom didn't exist. And when the FedEx guy came, I'd be like, "Hey, you want a cup of coffee? Come on in." And they'd be like, "Get away from me," But I was so upset and lonely that I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It was also challenging because I lacked one major resource, and that was money. So having no money definitely puts a cramp in your vision. And so I had to really figure out ways to overcome that enigma. And the way that I did it was I mortgaged my house. I took every loan I possibly could out on every credit card that you could imagine. And I hired my first group of people. I bought my first 3 houses with absolutely on a total shoestring. And it was very, very, very challenging.
How did you articulate to your community, stakeholders, I mean, everybody, that you were doing this at that time? Because talk about trailblazing, you couldn't like point to something down the street and saying, that's what we're going to do, right? I mean, you probably had to paint a total fresh picture for everybody.
Yeah, it was very difficult, but I mean, I did, and I just explained the same thing I keep saying now. The funny part is when I started Community Options, as I said in the beginning, our mission is to develop housing and employment for people with disabilities. I came up with the idea because from IBM, because IBM says we make business machines. And I realized that we had to keep the mission and the method and what we were trying to communicate very simple to the public. We didn't want to get real flowery and real overly communicative where no one would really remember what we do. But to say we're going to find people houses and jobs, that was a pretty simple idea. And for people with disabilities to have that as an option was a very, very, very wonderful thing for parents and families who had historically not been exposed to that kind of thing. And by taking people with disabilities and finding them jobs and finding them places to live, their world changed so dramatically. Their lifestyle got better. They literally learned. If they had any sort of and negative kinds of behavior, that seemed to diminish, and they seemed to feel like there was a meaning that they had to life. I can remember that one of the first people I met at an institution, his name was Bernard, and I said, "Bernard, what do you do?" He said, "Well, I put these plastic pens that are different colors into a bag, and then I put that bag into a bigger bag, and then I put that bag into a box. And then after I do all that, I dump it out and do it again. Ridiculous, isn't it?" And he laughed.
Yeah.
Now, Bernard was blind, and Bernard was blind, and Bernard had intellectual disabilities. But he knew that what he was doing was meaningless.
Yeah.
So So I said, "What do you like to do?" And he said, "Well, I can answer the phone. I can talk to people." So we got him a job as a receptionist. And he's been a receptionist since the founding of the organization, almost for over 25 years. Bernard but did something I'm not doing, which is he retired. He has his own condo. He pays his own taxes. We give him support. We help him with checkbooks, etc. He has a machine that reads the news to him. But he lives a life that's much more intriguing and much more interesting than he ever had before living in an institution. And I said, "What did you hate the most about institutions?" And he said, well, Robert, that you had to take ice cold showers and with a
Mm.
lot of other people.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
and I said, well, what he said, now I can listen to TV as long as I want. And no one tells me when to go to bed, because he has to decide, because he has to get up and take the bus to go to work.
Mhm.
Now, the funny part about this whole story, the bus one time dropped him off, and they dropped him off at the wrong condo. So
Oh,
he knocked on the door, and an older woman answered the door, and she said, what are you doing here? And he goes, what are you doing in my condo? And she said, this is my condo. The short end of that story is they have lunch once a month.
wow.
So
Wow.
so it forged a totally different relationship, because
Mhm.
he would never have had a happenstance, serendipitous thing like that.
No. It's interesting because you talk about this institutional warehousing, and then you talk about the group homes. And when you and I were chatting in the green room, there's a huge segment of our professional population in social services, in programming, in college, that have no idea about institutional warehousing, that didn't exist. I mean, but I'm assuming you and I are a similar age, and I can remember, driving in my community, and there were institutions, right? I mean, you would see them, and you knew that's, you didn't really know, but you intuited, even as a child, that this was a grim place, right? Now, group homes, they can be in your neighborhood and you have no idea, right? Talk about that link and what you all have been doing with that.
Well, I always like to say that one of the things we try to do is have invisible programs. I don't want you to drive by and say that's where they live, or
Yeah.
our vans don't have logos. Our houses look just like everyone else's. We keep our lawn just as good as everybody else. We do the maintenance work, and we do all of that stuff. And the staff that we hire, we train very well, so they're working in the house to make sure that everything's being taken care of. So, and right now, there's about 17 to 20,000 people still living in institutions, and there's a lot of people. What they've done now is kind of a convenient way of dealing with the waiting list problems. Is they're unfortunately putting young people and people that are in their 20s and in their teens in nursing homes. And that's another camouflage way of dealing with of what they think is alleviating problems and having people live in the community when they're really living in a nursing home. So we're taking people out of the nursing homes as well. And then, of course, we talk to the families saying, you can avoid this as a step, and we can take them right from when you need the service. We can provide that service from when you can't provide services for your own loved one.
Wow. I'm thinking about just the educational aspect of what you have to do in terms of just getting everybody up to speed, from the nomenclature to the mentality, the mindset, the journey of this whole process. It's got to be somewhat exhausting and somewhat foundational to the work that you have to do, right? I mean, are you finding that your teams are having to educate and get everybody up to speed before then they can even enact their work?
Yeah, it's interesting. The most important aspect of anybody that we hire to do the staff work is that they have to have a very, very, very strong ability for common sense, and and treat everyone like they want to be treated. And what we do, we have this very complicated way of educating the community. Do we send them brochures? No. Do we do major campaigns? No. What we do is we invite them over to have a barbecue. We come on over. We're going to have a barbecue this Sunday. Come on over to our small house, and we'll cook up some fish or some burgers, and you can come and meet the people who are your neighbors. And we found that that's the best way of diffusing any kind of misconceptions that people have. We also think that, again, the true enemy that we've always had in developing programs in the community is ignorance. And as long as we can educate the public that we're just like anybody else, we love, we want jobs, And we want to respect, and we'll give you the same respect that you give us. And as long as we can do that, we feel that people with disabilities can live a much better life, and the community accepts them much more.
Well, and it reduces the fear, the fear of the otherness that we see. It plagues society over and over again. And I don't know why it's such a hard lesson for us to learn. Okay, now this is the part of the show where I ask you to get out your crystal ball and polish it up. Because what do you see as the future? And when we talk about disability advocacy and just moving forward in a better, stronger way, what do you see?
Well, let's just look for a second at the demographics here. The secret is that the baby boomers are getting older. That's a fact. And the baby boomers are going to need stuff. Now, what had historically happened with people with disabilities relative to work was they were pretty much exploited in the sense that they were put in a workshop where they, put, nails into bags, or they did little kinds of basket weaving, if you will, activities. Mm-hmm. What the United States has figured out is they can exploit that labor in third world countries. True. And they do that. Also, we know that, you can do at the snap of a button, somebody from Vietnam can answer your phone and be the receptionist. However, we still need somebody to carry our luggage up the stairs. We still need somebody to clean our office. We still need somebody who can help us change the tire on our car. We still need somebody who can help us with that, install that complicated computer chip that we haven't figured out how to put where it is. And when we look at those kinds of elements, the people with disabilities will be those people. Because let's face it, right now, we're in a crisis relative to not having enough workforce. The unemployment rate and the number of people that are looking for jobs right now is amazing. And people with disabilities, in my prediction, my crystal ball, will be some of the people that fill a lot of those needed jobs to be the receptionist at that hotel, to be the person that helps carry the luggage up the stairs, to be the person that makes sure that you get the order that you need for your fast food delivery. That's going to be the issues, and we're seeing that now, because that can't happen in overseas, and that can't happen with the internet, and that can't happen with a Zoom call, or it can't happen virtually. It has to happen face to face.
Yeah. Well, and it seems to me that the more accepting you are of that concept, the more open you are to the process. I know that in my local supermarket, the bagging staff and the cart wranglers are all, and we call them packaging engineers, right? But they help you get your order passed and put together and everything. And it's over the years, I noticed how our community in our neighborhood, they know these people's names. They've been aging with them. They see them. They're, it's a very positive thing, because one, it's ended that fear of being other, and everybody's kind of figured it out, right? And it seems to be incredibly, incredibly successful, a successful program. In my neighborhood, it's Safeway Albertsons, and they have a national structure for it. And that labor force is incredibly consistent. They don't come and go and change. I mean, they seem like more consistent than the cashiers almost.
Yes, because when we come to the job, we don't care about what our neighbor said about us the night before. We leave all the drama at home. People with disabilities love to have a job. They love to work, and they love to feel appreciated. Yeah. And they're not going to be looking at an iPhone and seeing whether they're popular that day. They're going to make sure that you're saying hello to them and that they can greet you and bag your groceries, whatever they need to do. And that can transform to a variety of other jobs as well. And so that's it. The other part of the crystal ball that I want to bring up is that we have to get a lot more people off these waiting lists, and government has to realize that people with disabilities are not only a viable workforce, but they really should be involved in having the same rights and living in the same housing with dignity as other people. And they're going to have to start figuring out how to clear the way for that. And in a time when we're totally distressed over things like bullying and discriminatory practices in a variety of genres, what we have to realize is that people with disabilities are individuals that have, in fact, had a history of being discriminated and had a history of being in need of housing and poverty, and that they want to be part of a community. And I think the more that the government realizes that that's going to happen, the more we can do that. And I make an effort. We're in 12 states. I know all 12 governors, and I talk to them all about what we're doing, and they all listen to what we're doing too. So I think that's really important as well.
I was riveted by, and almost at the same time shamed by the notion that you brought up very quickly and succinctly about the Civil Rights Act never included this concept of disability. And I never thought of it until you mentioned. I was like, holy moly, so true. So true. And then you linked in this concept of social behavior, kindness, bullying, all that. That's a big part of the ecosystem for this part of our population. And so I really appreciate you bringing this forward, because it's just been so fascinating. Hey, I warned you, my new friend, that this was going to go by fast, and our time has flown by. I have been riveted by this conversation. And for somebody who prides himself on thinking they know about this, you've really illuminated a lot of things that I hadn't put together. And so I'm super appreciative. Robert Stack, President and CEO of Community Options. Go to comop.org. That's comop.org. And you'll be able to learn about the work and the trajectory of the work that Community Options has done. 12 states, you're in 12 states, and those are going across the country, right? It's not just in the North Atlantic.
No, from New York to Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, to South Carolina, Tennessee, Iowa. We're all over the place.
That's awesome. It's really, really cool. You can learn a lot about their programming, their concepts. And I think too, and I keep going back to this, but the historical change and shift in how we have grappled with this issue of disability and advocacy and living with dignity has been fascinating. And we just really touched on it. But Robert, you've been at the forefront of this, and it's just been such a pleasure to have you chat with us. I hope you continue your work and then check back in with us.
Love to. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
It's been a lot of fun. Hey, everybody, we want to make sure that we give a shout out of gratitude to our presenting sponsors. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and 180 Management Group. These are the folks that support us day in and day out so we can have fabulous thought leaders like Robert Stack on today, making a huge difference in our world. Robert, I got to really briefly tell you before our time's up and our producer cuts us off. I flunked an econ class in college because the essay that I had to write was a 4-hour essay, timed essay, and during finals was about and they use the word handicapped situation. And I ended up spending my 4 hours writing why handicapped was not the right word in the genesis of, begging and cap in hand and all this stuff. And I flunked that class because the professor was torqued at me because I schooled them on a piece of vocabulary. But so that, when you said the handicapped, man, that has stuck in my brain for 40 plus years. And I'm sure that professor never changed their vernacular. I'm sure of it. But, that just it eliminates how we're all evolving. And thanks to your good work, we're evolving. So it has been a joy to have you on. And we will definitely keep checking on your work and seeing what's going on. I've had somebody write in during the live part of our show, which of course we're live, that says, we need you in Rochester, New York. So
There you go.
I
Love to go.
I just want to end with that. Hey, everybody, as we end each and every episode, we like to leave with this message. And the message is this: to stay well so you can do well. See you again, everyone.